We like to believe our daily routines keep us safe. Walking the dog, crossing the street, taking a late-night stroll through the neighborhood. But danger doesn't always lurk in haunted houses or ghost stories. Sometimes, the most terrifying moments aren't supernatural at all. They're the ones that slip quietly into ordinary nights, catching you off guard when you least expect it. The silver car. A young woman named Leah from the UK was 18 at the time of these events, and she describes her quiet, safe neighborhood as the last place she ever expected to be genuinely afraid. For years, Leah had a nightly ritual. Around 9 p.m., she would take her dog for a 40-minute walk along a familiar route. It was a comfortable routine, and she never worried about her safety. Her village was small and everyone knew each other, so the idea of a random, dangerous encounter felt impossibly distant. That sense of security began to unravel about a week ago. It was a typical night dark, but the streetlights were bright enough to see the path ahead. About 15 minutes into her walk, she noticed a silver car stopped on the road about 100 feet behind her. Her dog, a large golden retriever named Buster, seemed unbothered, trotting along happily. Leah, however, felt a prickle of unease. She was a small young woman, and a stranger's car stopping so close in the dark was enough to put her on alert. She tried to rationalize it away. Maybe the driver was lost or had pulled over to check their phone. She decided not to overthink it and kept walking. She'd gone maybe another minute when she glanced back again. The silver car was no longer there. Leah breathed a small sigh of relief, but it was short-lived. A few seconds later, she saw the same car, now driving slowly up the road behind her. It moved at a crawl, almost matching her pace exactly, before stopping directly behind her. This time, the feeling was undeniable. It wasn't a coincidence. She felt a cold dread creep up her spine as she quickened her pace, pretending not to notice. After a moment, the car drove off. Over the next few nights, this unnerving routine repeated itself 2 more times. Each time, the silver car would appear out of nowhere, slowly follow her, and then stop right behind her before disappearing again. The pattern was so strange, so deliberately unsettling, that Leah began to feel like she was being watched even when the car wasn't there. She knew she had to change something. The predictability of her route was now a liability. A few nights later, she decided to start her walk an hour earlier and take a completely different path. The new route took her down a road she hadn't walked in a long time, and the change of scenery made her feel a little more at ease. The first part of the walk was uneventful, and Leah felt the paranoia she'd been carrying start to lift. It was almost over with only about 15 minutes left to go. That's when she saw it. About 60 feet behind her on the sidewalk, a tall man dressed completely in black was walking in the same direction. He looked to be in his mid to late 20s or 30s. His head was down, and his pace was steady. Leah's gut instinct screamed at her. She immediately thought of the silver car, of the feeling of being watched, and the hair on the back of her neck stood up. She tried to act casual, pulling out her phone and pretending to be on a call. She glanced back again a few minutes later, and the gap between them had closed. It was only about 20 feet away now. Panic flared. Leah decided to make a break for it. She picked up her pace, turning onto a side street that led directly to her house. As she turned the corner, she risked another glance. The man in black had turned onto the same street. She was only 2 minutes from her front door, but the sudden terror made her mind race. Her small village road led nowhere. Unless you lived on it, there was no reason to be there. And she knew for a fact that this man was a complete stranger. To confirm her worst fear, she deliberately crossed to the other side of the street. He did the same, matching her every move. She tried to slow down and then speed up again. He mirrored her pace, staying about 10 feet behind her. The reality of the situation hit her like a physical blow. He wasn't just walking the same way. He was actively following her. Her mind was screaming at her not to lead him to her house, but she had no other choice. He was much taller and faster than her, and the street was deserted. Running felt pointless. She ran to her front door, fumbling with her keys, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. As she finally got the door open, she turned back one last time. He was standing at the end of her driveway, a dark silhouette against the streetlights. His presence was a silent, chilling promise that he knew where she lived now. Leah scrambled inside and locked the door behind her, collapsing against it, her body trembling. She lives with her family, so she wasn't alone, but that didn't stop the feeling of violation and dread from settling in her stomach. She never saw the silver car again, but she's certain the man in black was connected to it. The entire event left her with a permanent sense of unease. She now carries a personal alarm, and she no longer walks her dog at night. Every time she glances out her window, she can't shake the feeling that she's being watched, and she wonders what would have happened if she had made it to her front door in time. The scariest part of all this, she told us, is that there was no explanation, no motive, just a simple, terrifying feeling of being preyed upon for reasons she will never know. The Silent Watcher. A young woman named Sarah recounted an event that happened to her about 3 years ago when she was living in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The area was well maintained and felt incredibly safe, which is why she never hesitated to go for walks late at night. One night, around 3:30 a.m., Sarah was feeling restless and decided to get some air. She knew it wasn't a smart idea for a young woman to be walking alone at that hour, but she was only 2 blocks from her apartment and the streets were completely empty. As she approached a small park near her building, she noticed the area was lined with large, thick bushes. A street ran next to the park, and on the other side of the street was an open, grassy field. It was in this empty expanse that she saw him. A bald man was crossing the field carrying several large items wrapped tightly in black plastic. He was wearing what looked like blue surgical gloves and a long, translucent plastic jacket. The whole scene was bizarre and deeply unsettling. He was moving these bags from the direction of the park to the field. Sarah stopped dead in her tracks, watching him from a distance. As he went to cross the street again with another wrapped item, he must have seen her. The man suddenly stopped, dropped the bag, and ran toward the bushes lining the park path. He quickly shoved the bags into the foliage and crouched down, trying to hide. But Sarah could still see his distinctive bald head peeking out from behind the leaves. It was clear he was trying to hide from her. A wave of ice-cold dread washed over her. The situation felt wrong on every level, and she knew she didn't want to be there a second longer. She quickly turned around and began walking back the way she came, her heart pounding against her ribs. She tried to appear calm, not wanting to spook him. She told herself that if a predator is stalking you, the worst thing you can do is run and show them you're a frightened animal. Every few steps, she glanced over her shoulder. That's when she saw it again, his bald head slowly rising over the bushes, watching her retreat. The sight was so chilling that she had to fight the urge to break into a full sprint. She kept her pace quick and steady, but as she was about a block away, she saw him again. He had run across the street to the other side of the park and was now hiding behind a large tree. Once again, his bald head was visible, peeking out from the trunk. He was following her. He had seen her, and was now making sure he knew where she lived. By the time she reached her house, her hands were trembling so badly she could barely get the key in the lock. She rushed inside and locked both the front and back doors, her mind racing with all the terrifying possibilities of what could have happened. That night, she lay in bed unable to sleep. The image of his pale, bald head burned into her memory. The next day, she decided to go back to the park in the afternoon when it was full of people. She was looking for a sign, any hint of what she had seen. She walked to the exact spot where he had hidden the black bags, half expecting to find something left behind. But there was nothing. No bags, no broken twigs, no sign that anyone had ever been there. It was as if the whole encounter had never happened. Later that evening, after a normal day, she was in the kitchen getting a glass of water. Her kitchen had a window that overlooked the backyard. It was a habit of hers to keep the lights off at night so she could look out without being seen. As she was filling her glass, she glanced out the window and her entire body froze. There, standing in the middle of her backyard, was the same bald man. He wasn't moving. He wasn't doing anything at all. He was simply standing there, staring at her house. Even in the dim light, she could see his pale, bald head. The sheer audacity of it, of him being so close to her home, filled her with a new kind of terror. Fueled by a mix of fear and adrenaline, She cracked the window open and shouted, "Hey, what are you doing? Get out of here, or I'm calling the police." The moment he heard her voice, the man turned and ran. He scaled the fence and disappeared into the night, leaving the gate wide open behind him. Sarah never saw him again after that night. To this day, she still has no idea what he was doing with those bags in the park or why he followed her home and came into her backyard. But she also told us that she doesn't think she wants to know. The image of him standing silently in her yard, watching her house, is a memory that will likely haunt her for the rest of her life. The Crosswalk Predator. Maya was 22 years old and living in a large city when this terrifying event took place. At the time, she was in the process of applying to grad school, which meant her evenings were a dedicated routine of work, study, and late-night trips to the library. Every night after her shift ended, she would go to the local university library and study until it closed at 11 p.m. She'd then take the subway home and make a quick stop at a 24-hour grocery store near her apartment. It was a familiar, safe pattern. The late-night store was always quiet, and she enjoyed the solitude of browsing the aisles for ingredients for a simple dinner. One night, after she'd bought her groceries, she stepped out and walked to the crosswalk. There were a couple of other people waiting for the light to change, which was typical for the busy city. Suddenly, a man ran up out of nowhere and stopped right next to her. He was a slim, middle-aged man, maybe 5 feet 7 inches tall. Maya didn't think anything of it. She assumed he was just trying to catch the light. When the light changed and the group began to cross, Maya noticed something strange about his walk. He was moving his legs in an unnatural, almost staggered way, as if he was intentionally slowing down and stumbling. One moment he was ahead of her, and the next he was suddenly right behind her. Maya, with her small and delicate build, carrying a stack of library books, felt a brief flicker of unease. She briefly wondered if it was connected to some kind of a mental health issue, but she quickly dismissed the thought. She laughed it off and kept walking, the odd behavior already forgotten. She was only a few blocks from her home, and she decided to make a quick stop at a small 24-hour convenience store she knew for cheap produce. She was only inside for about 5 minutes, and the man from the crosswalk was completely out of her mind. But when she stepped back outside, her blood ran cold. He was standing right there, waiting. He must have been watching the store's entrance. The shock of seeing him again, so close, so deliberate, made her heart begin to pound with a sick, certain dread. As she passed him, he started walking right behind her. She could hear his footsteps, feel his presence just a few feet away. She needed to confirm her suspicion, to know for sure what she was dealing with. Just ahead, she saw the entrance to the subway station. She ducked inside, hoping he would follow her, and more importantly, hoping she could find a ticket collector to ask for help. But the station was eerily deserted. There was no one at the booth, no commuters on the platform, just the stale, empty air of the tunnel. Thinking fast, she hid against a wall out of sight from the street entrance and waited. About 30 seconds later, the man walked into the station. He wasn't running. He was walking casually, almost skipping, heading straight for the turnstiles as if he'd planned to take the train all along. But just as he was about to go down the stairs, he glanced over his shoulder. He saw her hiding against the wall. Maya was frozen in place. The man stopped, his body rigid. The casual, almost playful demeanor he'd had was gone. The moment he saw that she knew he was there, that she had been watching him, he quickly turned around and walked out of the station. That's when the terror truly hit. She wasn't just being followed by a strange man. She had just escaped a much more sinister plan. She fumbled for her phone and called her roommate Tim. She prayed he was home and would pick up. After a few agonizing seconds, she heard his voice. She quickly and breathlessly explained what was happening. Tim, calm and collected, asked if the man was still there. Maya carefully peeked around the corner of the wall. Sure enough, he was standing on the sidewalk looking down into the station. At that moment, a train pulled in, and a crowd of people began to exit the turnstiles. Maya told Tim the man was still there, but that she was going to leave with the crowd. They agreed she would stay on the phone and walk toward home while Tim walked toward her. As she left the station, she had to walk directly past the man. He saw her in the crowd, and his stalking game began again. She explained every detail to Tim on the phone, her voice shaking as she tried to walk as fast as she could. The sidewalk was covered in snow and ice, making her feel even more vulnerable. Just as she was about to panic, she saw Tim, tall and sturdy, walking toward her. The immense relief was almost overwhelming. They met in the middle, and with her roommate by her side, she felt safe for the first time that night. Their house was only a 5-minute walk away. They quickly went inside and locked the door. They turned off the lights and peered through the window. The street was empty. The man was gone. Maya never saw him again, but the memory of his casual, predatory stalking has never left her. The simple truth is, he didn't just happen to be going to the same place as she was. He had been watching her since the crosswalk, and he had been waiting for her to come out of that store. The only thing that saved her was the moment she turned the tables and saw him hiding. It was a stark and terrifying reminder that danger can appear in the most ordinary of places, and that sometimes the most mundane actions can turn into a matter of life and death. The predator's gaze. A man comes from Transylvania, Romania. The forests there, he explains, are a constant presence, even in the middle of a city. The population of brown bears is high, and they are known to wander into urban areas at night in search of food. For him, the constant awareness of this fact is just a part of everyday life. One evening around 9 p.m., he was walking home after a martial arts practice. His route took him through a large pedestrian-only area, about 15 meters wide, flanked on both sides by 10-story apartment buildings. The buildings were separated by open spaces, which allowed you to see through to the neighborhoods on either side. To his left was a typical Romanian suburban neighborhood with more apartment buildings and small streets. To his right, there was a small 2-lane street, a school, and then, about 100 meters beyond that, a thick, dark forest. At that hour, some people were still outside, sitting on benches and chatting with their neighbors, but the overall atmosphere was quiet. As he walked past one of the open spaces between the buildings, something happened that he still can't explain. He felt an overwhelming, intense sense of danger coming directly from the forest. It was an immediate and powerful feeling, a primal warning that something was watching him from the darkness between the trees. He instinctively slowed his steps, his heart rate accelerating. He scanned the tree line, but he couldn't see anything unusual. There were no sounds, no rustling in the leaves, no movement. But the feeling was so potent, so undeniable, that he couldn't ignore it. It was unlike any fear he had ever experienced. It wasn't the kind of general alertness you feel when walking through a rough part of town, and it wasn't the wary feeling of being watched by an animal in the wilderness. This was different. This was a deep, bone-chilling certainty that he was not safe. The feeling told him, in no uncertain terms, that something was out there, not far away, and that he needed to leave immediately. He didn't just feel like he might be in danger. He felt as though his mind knew with absolute certainty that he was being observed by a predator and that his very presence was a threat. The feeling was so strong that it almost stopped him in his tracks. Just as quickly as it had appeared, the feeling subsided, but the residual unease lingered. He picked up his pace and hurried home, the powerful sensation still on his mind. For a long time, he tried to make sense of the experience. Being a bit of a skeptic with a fascination for the strange, he first considered a supernatural explanation, a powerful, unseen presence giving off the sensation of a top predator. But recently, he's begun to wonder if the explanation is much simpler. Maybe it was a bear. He explains that they are common in the area, and they are notoriously quiet. Maybe his mind, subconsciously, had picked up on a sound or a scent that his conscious mind didn't register. He admits that he wasn't paying special attention to that side of the area that night. He didn't see or hear anything out of the ordinary, and the feeling wasn't connected to a specific event he noticed. It was just a feeling, pure and unadulterated, that he has never had before or since. He says that while he enjoys a good paranormal story, he doesn't want to call it that just to make it more exciting. He hopes it was something strange, something he'll never understand. But he also admits that it is much more likely there is a simple explanation, a logical reason for the primal terror he felt that night. Whatever the cause, the memory of that powerful, silent warning still chills him to this day, a reminder of the unseen dangers that lurk just beyond the edge of the light. The voice in the woods. Gabriel was 21 years old when this happened, and he lives in a quiet suburban area with a dense patch of woods a few blocks from his house. At 6 feet, he was tall and had a confident walk, so he never felt uneasy walking alone at night. In fact, he found the solitude peaceful. One night, he was walking home after hanging out with some friends. The streets were quiet and mostly empty. As he approached the woods, he was just enjoying the silence when he suddenly heard a voice calling his name from deep within the trees. It was his mother's voice. "Gabriel, help me," she cried. The voice was clear, laced with an undeniable tone of fear and desperation. She kept calling his name over and over, pleading for help. His heart immediately started pounding in his chest. He stopped and turned toward the dark line of trees. It was so late that he couldn't see anything beyond the first few trunks. "Mom!" he shouted, stepping closer. He thought maybe she had gone for a usual night run and somehow gotten lost or hurt in the woods. He knew she had been planning to go for a run after he got home to watch his younger sister. The thought of her in distress was all he could focus on. He was about to step into the darkness when his mind caught up to the chilling details. He had a text from his mom from just 10 minutes ago, a simple message telling him to hurry home so she could go for her run. If she had been running in the woods, he would have seen her on the way to the woods. But there was no one. The thought was so jarring that he froze. He pulled out his phone, his hands shaking, and called his mom. The phone rang for what felt like an eternity before she picked up. "Are you in the woods?" he blurted out. "No. I'm at home with your sister," she replied, her voice sounding completely normal, completely calm. The moment she said that, the voice in the woods stopped. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the calls for help. A wave of deep, paralyzing fear washed over him. Something in the woods had been trying to lure him in, and it had used his mother's voice to do it. He still shudders thinking about the most disturbing detail of all. The voice had called him Gabriel, his full name. No one, not his friends, not his dad, not even his sister, ever used his full name. Only his mom did. It knew his name, and it knew the one voice that would make him drop his guard and rush into the dark without a second thought. His legs felt like lead, and his lungs burned as he finally sprinted the rest of the way home. He burst through the front door, slamming it shut, and there was his mom on the couch with his sister, exactly where she said she would be. He told them what happened, and while they were concerned, they couldn't make sense of it either. He knew it couldn't have been a prank. His mom wasn't a prankster, and there was no way she could have gotten back into the couch before he got home without him seeing her. The only conclusion was that something else was in those woods. Something that didn't just have a human voice, but his mother's specific voice. Something that knew his full name. He still has no answer for what was in those woods, and the question keeps him up at night. The terrifying thought of what would have happened if he hadn't pulled out his phone, if he had just run into the dark, is a weight that will likely never leave him.